Hey, it's Kevin from KDW Mixing and Mastering. This week I thought I'd do a video on a great tool called StereoMonoizer. Basically, you can use this tool to convert stereo files to mono files, but you can also go the other way as well, and a few other features. Now, where this is handy and why I use it is during mixing, a lot of the times you'll get projects from clients or various sources, and when they've bounced the tracks down, all the individual stems, sometimes you'll get every single track in stereo, even if it is a mono source. When you import this into your project, all your tracks become stereo, and it can be quite annoying to have, to me, I personally find it annoying to have all my tracks in stereo, especially if they're mono sources. I like to see them in mono, and it also saves on some resources within your system. Now, obviously, you can do conversions, etc., all manually, but this little tool here just speeds up the process. So if it's something you find doing a lot, then you can, use this tool. To start a new project, you would get all your files, and I've just got a couple here. Just drag them across into the StereoMonoizer, and then do an analyze. Once it's analyzed, it'll tell you what it thinks the file is and what it thinks it wants to do to the file. Now you can confirm that, so you'll see here this track here was coming up as two mono channels, so it would appear as a stereo file, but it's a mono source. So it's saying it's going to convert and just output the mono left side. This track here, which you'll see here, is a track from Pro Tools, which with Pro Tools they split their stereo files. Even though you see a stereo track in Pro Tools, underneath the files have been separated into a left and right file. Now if you use a system like Cubase or something else where it doesn't do that separation of the files, you might like the files to be joined back together. So this tool's handy for that as well, for taking Pro Tools separated files and joining them back together into a single stereo file. So this tool has picked up that it's a split stereo file, and it's suggesting to convert into an interleave stereo. And then we have this drum bass track, which is a stereo file, and it's stating that it is actually a stereo file and it doesn't need to do any conversion to it. Now you can also click on the file and have a display of the waveform to give you an impression of what it is. Now, being all grey like this means that it is purely a mono file. We click on this, you'll see that you get grey and blue, which indicates that that's, say, the other channel. So it's sort of showing you how much stereo content there is in there. And you'll see that with this one here as well. So when you click on that, if you've got blue there that's showing all the stereo content, you might have a file that it determines is a stereo file, and you really think that it is a mono file. You can click on this and you might see that it's just picked up one tiny component where somebody's maybe put on a reverb or something on that file, and it's making the software think that it's stereo, and there could be a small component that's stereo. So then you can obviously override that, and you can do whatever you want. You can split stereo, you can do that. So once you determined what it wants to do and what you any overrides that you've done, then you just go and process. Now what I like to do is you get this option here where you choose another output folder. So I can go and select where I want it to go. So for instance, this is where the files are now, so I might make a new folder. We'll just call it temp2. And because I've also got this tick box here, copy all files, I like to have that tick. So what it does is it takes even files that it doesn't convert and copies them all to there. So I know that once I've done this process, all my files, converted or not converted, are sitting in this temp2 file. So that then is the folder that I will drag into my project. So I just OK that now, Then you just click on process and it will go away and process them all. It'll give you a bit of a report of what it's done at the end. And then if I come over to my folder, I go into temp 2, you'll see there's my 3 files. So there's my backing chorus, which is now will be a mono file. My drum 1 has now been joined together. So prior it was a separate left and right. It is now joined them. And the bass, it would have done nothing, but it's just copied the file across there. So now I've got a Cubase project over here. So all those files that are in that folder, I can now just grab them, drag them across my different tracks, and you'll see there's my files there. So let's drag that one in as mono. We've got a stereo and a stereo. Okay, so that's for preparation of your project. Now, specifically, I guess to Cubase anyway, is that at the moment there's no ability to separate a stereo track into 2 monos. In Pro Tools, you can just right click on here and you can split to 2 mono files, which can be very handy if you've got some overheads or something like that and you want to process each side independently. But you can't do that in Cubase. It doesn't give you that option. So what some people do is they'll bounce it out to individual left and right tracks, etc. If you do happen to have this tool, then you can use that same method but backwards. So what we can do is we'll take one of our new files. So if you were to say, let's say you've bounced or consolidated that file, and we'll say we'll take the drum 1 file and we drag that into here, and then we analyze it and it says it's stereo. So what we can do is go convert to split. Now I'm going to keep it into the same folder and I'm going to process that file. Then when we go across to here, now we'll see that we've got back our drum 1 left, drum 1 right. So in theory, now I should be able to take those and drag them over to here as different tracks, and there is your drum track split up into 2 single mono files. Another handy feature that I've found I can use is that if you've ever done a project in Cubase, you might find that somebody sent you some tracks and they've given you 2 files independently, but they're the same instrument, or they should be joined together. For instance, like I've got here overhead 1, overhead 2. I want them to be a stereo track. I want to join them together. Now at the moment, most people in Cubase would either bus that to another stereo track, bounce it out, just to try to join them together, because you can't select them or drag. In Pro Tools, you can take 2 mono files, select them, so you could select the 2 files and drag them into a stereo track. You can't do that in Cubase. It won't let you drag them in. To convert 2 mono tracks to a stereo track, you have to do a bouncing out sort of scenario. What you can do is you can use the same method we used before, but we can trick StereoMonoizer to believe that they're stereo files and want to interleave them back together. And the way you can do that is, now obviously if you've got Pro Tools files, they're already set up to do that, but I can use the Pro Tools method to trick StereoMonoizer into converting this into a stereo file, which we can then use, drag back into Cubase. All I need to do is just go overhead.l.wave, and then the second file, overhead.r.wave, and you have to use this .l.r format because that's the only thing that this tool recognizes to join the 2 files together. So if I drag that across, I do an analyze, and it wants to convert to a stereo file, process, and we look over here, I've got overhead.wave. So then if I drag that into the project, in we go, and then we have stereo file. So we've converted these two individual files into a stereo file using that tool. Simple, didn't have to bounce out, we just needed to take the files and do that. Thank you for watching, I'll see you next time.